Then at that point, these overseas people who bought the assets control the whole world system and set up a global village. In the year 1961, the International Monetary Fund came to New Zealand, and this is how the whole plan was initiated. They were involved in this plan, and the plan was to lend every country money and then make those politicians of the day sign conditions which would later be fulfilled. So in 1961 they came to New Zealand. Our Prime Minister was Mr. Keith Holyoake. Our government borrowed a lot of money from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and signed the conditions. Then the IMF people went away again with their empty suitcases, left it at that, and let us go ahead with our plans to develop our country and so on using this money which we had borrowed. Now, little did the people know that when those politicians passed on, someone else took the job. The next group of politicians to come in were left with the terrible job of fulfilling the conditions. It happened about 22 years later, I think it was, in 1987, that's the year. We had 5 politicians in New Zealand worked in with the Mont Pelerin Society to bring about these conditions in the country. Now, let me read a scripture, Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. That's a powerful verse. In other words, we became the lender, the borrower, the IMF was the lender, and we had to do what they told us to do. We've heard these words come up day by day. Restructuring was the first word. Didn't know what it meant, but we learnt later it meant sacking thousands of government workers. The next word was corporatisation. Turn your government departments into corporations. Next word to come up was privatisation. It means privatise those corporations. Get big business involved in ex-government departments.
Selling off.
Selling off. Next word was shares at 49%. Overseas, keeping 51% majority shareholding in the country. We felt secure. I was in Sri Lanka last year. They told me that was called peopleisation. Every country's got their own little catchword, you see. Peopleisation makes the local people feel secure in that they have 51%. Very cleverly, a little stock market crash in New York, which lasts for 24 hours, frightens the peopleisation people. They sell their shares to the other guys, and the other guy's shareholding goes up to over 51%. At that point, what was owned by your country, paid for with your father's tax money, your grandfather's tax money, now goes into overseas hands, never to return again. So the key word, when you see privatisation, you add another word to it, and the word is goodbye, and the other word is forever. You will never see it again. Then they bring investors in, of course, because you've lost your assets and you've paid off the IMF with the money you've made. You've got nothing left, no assets and no money. Investors come in and buy up the rest of your country. This is globalisation, to set up a global village. Now, if you look on the back of the dollar, you see that the words there, Novus Ordo Seclorum, mean a secular, heathenistic, new world order, which is a government and so on. Now, in the case of this new world order, they use the analogy of the building of a house. When you build a house, you have a foundation, and if anybody who is watching this program has a pen and paper, I suggest you get it out and write down what I'm saying now.